Hello and welcome again to another development session where we will be working on the new application Notula. So last time, where did we leave off? We left off with the whole idea that we were going to develop this common domain object email. So I have done some research offline. I have already prepared a couple of things, and now I will show how, kinda, not fully, but how we will tackle this in a bit of a domain-driven test. So that means that I have the email object, which actually already has too much things because I don't have any tests yet. But we can kind of ignore that, and we will now start writing some tests. And the first test I would write test is like a value null. Why? Because it's an easy one. Oh yeah, I think my GitHub Copilot is probably still not connected, so I still don't have automatic features and whatever, but that's okay. So this is the easiest and first test that we should write. Keyboard shortcuts, still a bit funky. Okay. This test, of course, will succeed because of this object require null. So we're going to ignore because I have a lot of stuff now that I've already switched to the email. I also don't think this actually is really required to write it like this, but I will see. Oh no, it was required because if you do the shorthand syntax, then you can only do checks and no actual value. So this test works. This actually is not required yet. None of this actually is required, so I could just comment this out. But then of course my compiler is complaining, so. Now he's happy again. And so that's the first test. A second test, for instance, would very simple be that I just check Latin characters because it turns out that non-Latin characters are also allowed. For this, I'm going to do a param. Before I do the Latin test, which I can already prepare, I'm going to do another parameterized test. And this is an invalid one. And this should throw an illegal argument exception. Here you will have the string value, which as well can be final. I'm going to do an empty source. And I'm going to do a CSV, not a CSV, but a value source. I'm not sure. Value source, I've never heard of value sources. I have to look that one up. And then I say strings equals, and then, well, I know empty is reduced. I can still do space, which is then blank. It's a bit annoying, or I find annoying that they don't have an at blank source, which just has a white space or something. Then again, more characters could be considered blanks. So you can have user, I can have this.user, I can have at test, which is also invalid. Then I have user at, which is also invalid because there's nothing after it. This is invalid because you see me. And those are about the combinations I want to try. And they shall be invalid. Currently, my test fails. Why is that? Because there's nothing that actually checks it. See, he expects an error to be raised or thrown, but that didn't happen. It doesn't happen. So how do we fix it? Well, you probably want to do that with like matches pattern with an regex or something. The problem is if you do that, then you also have the valid character. The valid case. So then the whole idea of like test-driven development, where you first try the test that fails, then you fix it, that is a bit off here. What you could do is you could do it and then like, yeah, because technically this result value equals value should not be there. You can say this result value equals null, and then even your Latin, your regular test will still fail, because in this test you're actually gonna check as well the get value. That's why normally I do a nested class, but in this I can't do, well, technically I can do a constructor, and sometimes I will do that, but then I have to do like the get value. And for this kind of object, which currently doesn't have any logic, I yeah, I don't like it. We'll see how it evolves over the future. If it evolves, and then we'll be fine. But so what you can do is you can say matches pattern, and then you have to validate matches pattern input and the pattern. So the value should match slash s string, I guess, plus add slash s plus, something like that. And then this should hopefully all work. Yes, so this one is actually enough to catch my invalid cases, where it means like, oh yeah, you need an add. Oh, one last thing I'm going to do is like, for instance, this is user add test. It's funky how he even puts this on a new line as well, but well, I like it. Maybe not the cleanest, maybe not the nicest, easiest to see, but technically this one doesn't really serve any purpose. So I'm gonna maybe remove this one. And then it fits all in one line again. Okay, but so that also got caught because you can't do an at because whatever. Do I have a test? I think this actually might be too strict now, because S I think is a white space and not a character. I have to look up Java regex. I always forget what matches. I think S might be, yeah, Java pattern. Okay, what matches? What's AB? Non-word character, a non-white space character. It has to be capital S, because invalid escape sequence. It's not an escape. Ah, yes, yeah, okay. That's the annoying thing about patterns in now all of a sudden it fails, probably because of the last one. And then you can technically see, where can I see my tests? You see your tests, and you see here the last one, the at that one now is succeeding, which it shouldn't. And then you can say links, okay, well, so maybe the S is not correct. Maybe the word is the one I want, because that is digits, numbers, underscores. I don't think that's going to do dots, so that will give problems later, but hey, that's a problem for later. Okay, so now it works. And then Latin, here again, you have a parameterized test, value source. I am going to do this in a nested class. Nested. Nope, that's the wrong one. I always want to suggest the wrong one first. Class. Why? Because then I can do like this and say Latin, I say valid, and then it's easier to check. Then I can say what is valid. I can say assert that not thrown, assert no exception. But technically I don't need this. Why? Because I can do final var email equals new email of value, and then I can just say assert that email is not null. And this may seem weird because like what do you actually check? And I completely agree that this does seem weird at first, but trust me, this actually is just a separation of my tests, because you need to know that these tests, they only are supposed to test the constructors. In a constructor, you can't test anything. So my get value, which will be my next one, will actually test the different cases, like Latin, non-Latin, whatever, those kinds of upper cases, lower cases, mixed cases. It's going to test all of that. And again, I'm not so sure if I'm gonna keep this separation per se, because I think my get value, I can probably do all of them in Latin and non-Latin. I want to, for clarity, I probably want to have them separate. So anyway, so here you have the valid cases, which is user at test. That's a valid case. I can say a.b.c at test. I can say a underscore z 1990 at test. Maybe I should do a get example.com. And then to be cheeky, I am already gonna put in some non-Latin. I can just copy and paste, of course, like this keyboard shortcut says. And so all of this should be valid. And it is not. And then now you can see here which one is failing. Well, so the user at test succeeds, the a.b.c does not, a underscore z does not, and this also does not. And then according to some research, this is what it would match. But honestly, I think that is way too complex. I don't like complex RxXs because nobody understands it. Basically, what it says here is like, oh yeah, you can match. What can you match? Oh, you can match dot underscore percent plus minus, and then yeah, the PL. I think that is supposed to be. I think that even might not even be Java, because you have the groups like slash P is for character classes, lower, upper, ASCII, alpha, digits, whatever, and you can say a lot of these. So the L, maybe that means Latin. I don't know what they're supposed to say with it. The N. So anyway, I don't think this is actually a correct regex, and I don't want to have such a difficult regex. What I'm going to do is I just want to have non at least once. Then I have at, and then I say, and I have not at again at least once. That's it. No further. I don't care. Unless, of course, you have a validate.is email, but I don't think so. So this actually could be an interesting case, because for the front end I use the Javax Javax validation, which does have an email validator, which I can quickly show you. So now this works. You can run the entire class again just to make sure. But for instance, if you would look at my DTO, the create user DTO, this here, it says at email, and I have no idea what the email constraints is. Null elements are considered valid. Yeah, okay, so then I have to do at non null, I guess, because my password null elements are considered valid. Okay, Jakarta bin validation. Yeah, okay, not at not null. That's it, not non-null. And so this is my validation. Why do I rely on this? Well, because in the past I have decided not to do it, and now I want to try doing it. You always have to try out new things and see what you can do with those. In the past, I did try them, then I was like, well, they're not really strong enough, they're not really powerful enough. I have to write my own validators and whatever, so I decided my own validators. But now I want to rely more on actual framework features, so we will see how that is gonna go. Okay, so back to the email. I don't know why this didn't run. It's a bit annoying that I have compile errors. Typically, you wouldn't do it like this, but hey. So okay, so all my tests work, but now of course my get value I still have to test, which I don't really have a get value, so probably should just be at value void Latin, not Latin, lowercase. Because that's one of the things actually I didn't test here. Is uppercase characters. So I will add an uppercase character here now. Syntax error. Oh yeah, that's here on this. Yeah, of course there is syntax error. So I have a value source. Honestly, yeah, you can do a couple. Not that it matters too much, but let's do a couple. So for instance, I have john.doe at test, and I can do user at test. I probably want to make this a CSV source though. Why? And why do I want to do a CSV source? Is because I don't want to rely on the same logic in here. What you often will see is that people would say like, oh yeah, and I have a final string value and a final string, I'm going to say input output. And then people will write something like this, final var email equals new email input. And you say assert that email dot value is equal to input dot to lowercase. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but you don't actually know the value. How do you know? Like, I mean, like you already assume. If I see this test, then I don't really know, okay, you expect this to be lowercase, but what do you, for instance, do with these kind of characters that don't have a lowercase value? What do you expect with other situations? And so that's why I prefer to explicitly say input output, and then you all know it. Lowercase, oh no, actually this is an uppercase case. And that's why I do split them, because again, this should be parameterized tests. Here as well, I'm gonna make parameterized tests. The thing is, why do I prefer to do multiple tests like this? Is because I don't have full control over the code. CSV source. Does it only have one? Let me see. What does it have? Value text block. That actually is pretty funky, text block. Code character delimiter. No values. Maximum. Okay, so I think I can just indeed just completely. No, because I need to do a list. So yeah, That's the way it will be, no? No, I was correct. Why is it not working? Fire. That's weird. Okay, I think it was just complaining about the. I am actually gonna also not say output. I'm gonna say expected. This is the input that they expected. And then here again, you just have jom.do at test. Actually, there is no expected here. You only have a value here. So this does not have to be a value source. Well, yeah, this can be a value source, but then with strings equals. Actually, I think test is a top level domain. So what I did here, it's example.com. That's not a good idea. It should be unit test, for instance. User at unit.test. Here as well, I should add user.test. User.test. Okay. It's a bit funky, and I think I don't have to do it, but my code will rely on two lowercase, which is a method I don't have full control over, and I don't know how it really behaves in all these kind of cases. So I would prefer to have a couple of extra cases, you know. So you see, like, yeah, okay, so it's not just the first letter that does it; it's all capitals, it's everything, and which I mean makes sense, of course. That's what lowercase does. But still. And this is basically just testing a getter setter method where you say like, okay, well, just testing exactly what I put in there is the same, which of course will not be the case because we have not done this. This will succeed the first test, but not the second. So value dot to lowercase, and this is actually where the interesting part comes in, because what I could also do is I could override my value method and I could say return value dot to lowercase. I could do this as well. This is where the actual thing comes in, that a lot of people don't know, is like that the to lowercase actually has a locale. So it depends on your own system. And that is what I think and that's where the funny part comes in. Okay, and I quickly have to see if I can find some letters, but I'm not so sure. Are there non-Latin characters that have a lower and upper case? Because lower and upper casing, or capital and lower casing, is actually something that's kind of well, unique, I would say, to thingy, but then it turns out it's not, because you have Cyrillic, you have Greek, you have Armenian. Most other scripts in the world, like Arabic, Hebrew, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Thai, do not have these distinctions. Okay, so that's actually very interesting. I mean, like that's not gonna matter too much with here my parameterized source, but will matter here. So this works, this does not work. And so here, for instance, and I am gonna decide to do it in advance. I am gonna say locale. How do you do it again? You have like a root locale, which I don't think is gonna do much, but it hopefully does enough. Voila. I don't know how this impacts actually the locale. Use the case transformation rules for this locale. I don't know what it does. Probably people who know a lot more about letters and whatever are gonna be much better at this. But so one of the things, as I said, like what you could do is you could have your get value or your value return and do the two lowercase ad hoc. You could have two methods. This is like value, which is the raw value then. And you could say like a normalized value, which could do this as well. And then you can store it differently in the database. You could say like, well, I'm going to store it's case sensitive, but to compare it, you could even do a comparison. If you have an equals, which is implicitly defined on email. For instance, I can say new email A at B, and I can say final B equals new email, which is B at A. Then if I say assert that A dot equals is equal to B, this will fail. Makes sense. I mean, like they're two different objects, they don't even contain this exact same thing. But because it's a record class, this would actually be the same. This should succeed. Why is that? Because the identity of the object solely depends on the values that it has. So two different objects with the exact same content will be equals. So that's how the equals on the record class is implemented. And that is just good to know. This, of course, does, however, mean that if I would write this, for instance, in this case it will work. Why? Because again, the value is there. But if I would not do this, and instead I would, well, okay, I would do this, and I would have a public string value. I would overwrite the value and say return value dot to lowercase and not on root. Then, even though my tests will still succeed, because in the end you're still getting lowercase value, my equals will fail. Why? Because it compares the local, the stored email value. So that is why, for all simplicity, I am gonna just do it like I did it here, because I think this is better. That does, however, mean that if people sign up with an email address that contains uppercases, it will be converted to lowercases. And that's how it will be stored in the database. I don't care. Some people might be upset about it, but not me. At value source strings equals, and this is void non-Latin uppercase. And that's where the question comes in, like, does it really matter? I don't even think this really matters. Should I have an uppercase for Latin? I should have an uppercase for... I don't think so. So what am I going to do? I am just going to check some... I can't type Greek. So I am just gonna copy some stuff. What is he complaining about? A character could be confused, which is more common in source code. Okay, he's complaining that yeah. Well, that's kinda true, I guess. What are you suggesting then? Okay, that's test. And I expect this to be alpha, beta. See, the thing is, I mean, like, honestly, I don't really care. And now let's see if this actually works or not. Compile error, okay, yes, that's my fault. The non-Latin, that actually can go away. So then I have like non, so no lower case letters. Is that case insensitive letters? Insensitive letters. Or not letters. Scripts. This should also be in my test actually. This I think might. I am gonna copy this. Oh, actually, what I should be doing, like I'm using ChatGPT now, whatever. What I actually should be doing is I probably should connect. Well, skip for now. Can I not? Yeah. I know you have like a chat, and then I could do it straight in my terminal so people can see what it is. No uppercase in Chinese. Yes, makes sense. I know about that. That's why it's a thingy. Then apparently you have here another version as well. You have this, which becomes this. Honestly, if you ask me, you can never have too many cases. You have this one here, which becomes comma should be there, or which is this here. Wait, this. So actually, this one I can probably just delete. And then I actually want to have a simple case, which I am gonna put here first. Not source and add. Yeah, well, dot test. I don't like the com. And this actually is wrong because there should be no D here. There should be no capital S here at test. Because technically these are syntax error. Why is there a syntax error on this one? Comma. Okay, my bad. So technically, the character U plus one could be confused with the cascade letter P. Yes, P, Y, C. Yes, I understand this can be confused. And thank you for showing me. I actually don't know who. That's okay. Case insensitive scripts. I think Hebrew is also case insensitive. So Chinese, you have Japanese, Korean, Arabic. This is probably overkill. Thai. I have no idea what any of these mean. So I mean, like, probably there goes my whole. Oh, I don't want to use upper, like, top domain level things. I don't even know. Like, would this be what would be the top? Is this the first or the second? Because I know Arabic is from right to left, but I'm not sure if the email address also goes from right to left. I have no idea about that. Then I would do it. Anyway, final var email. This is overkill. Let me tell you, this is overkill. The expected, there is no expected. Because, well, I'm expecting exactly the same. So in that sense, you could think that this, because this test is exactly the same as this test. If you look at it, you have value. I am going to rename it to value, then you will see it's exactly the same. So you can say, like, well, this actually belongs with the exact same. See, like it's you know, it's the exact same. Yes, it is the exact same, but this is more case. Like, okay, you have lowercase Latin, whereas this is case-sensitive scripts, which is less far common. And if people are complaining like, hey, my email address is weird or is wrong, then at least I know which one is. But maybe it's right. Lowercase. I'm gonna rename this as well. Instead of saying uppercase, I'm gonna say converted to convert to lowercase. Here, no conversion. No conversion and convert to lowercase. Or conversion to lowercase. And then I can simply take this and put it here as well. Then I'm fine with that, because then I don't have the whole thing as like, oh, this is lowercase, because in these languages there is no lowercase, uppercase concept. And so then with all that implemented, if we now run everything, then hopefully all my tests pass, and this should be sufficient. Yes, so we have a very simple test for my email component, and I know emails that are valid will be valid. If I need to convert to lowercase, it will be converted to lowercase. That's all fine. So now, what do we have here? Well, here we have a bit of a problem. Not really. Here I just say no email. And that is one of the things that I also have been thinking of lately. And that is, I've had a period where I was against like the whole new email part, and I said like, oh, new email value. Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm gonna do email dot off value, which I don't know. I kind of like this approach more than this approach, because now you have new user login, new email, and I'm like, you have a new user login with like an email off and a password off. But I'm not sure if that's strictly needed, because in the end you do the exact same thing. You're just replacing the new with dot off. It's a bit more compact, but that's not really the purpose of it. It is the typical reason is to make it more more readable. That's also what the like the chronos, or like the date. You have a chrono period dot. I think it's not seconds. You have something duration dot of days, of hours, of millis, of minutes, of nanos, of seconds, and that makes sense to me. You have multiple of. If you convert this into a constructor, then that's confusing. The amount in temporal units, that one you could do. You could have set new duration, and then you could have set, well, it has a new duration apparently. Apparently duration has a constructor as well. I can't click on it because my see it has a where is the constructor of new duration? Here. Okay, it's a private one. You can't access it. Too bad. I'm wondering whether it also has a public one. Maybe not. Maybe they indeed want to block it off. But so if you have multiple of these, like where you say like, okay, I have a duration of seconds, I have a duration of hours, then it makes sense. As I said, you could still do like, oh, I want to have a duration of 0, and then here, well, not this because this one is private then. But for instance, I could say like, oh, duration of, and then here like a chrono unit dot seconds or something. And this would, like, for me, would be an allowed constructor still. But of course, if you go for the off approach, I would always go for the off approach and not like mix it with like, oh, you have a constructor and you have an off. The off is just very more clear. Like, I mean, like if I say a duration of seconds and I say 0, I probably shouldn't say 0 because it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so here you have a duration of 10 seconds. I mean, like, you can say you have a new duration 10 seconds, or it's a duration of seconds 10. And then you actually already see that, yeah, my IDE is not saying like, oh, the 10 actually is seconds. Like, I'm pretty sure it's seconds because it says of seconds. Whereas here you say, okay, new duration, and you say, okay, 10, and this is seconds. Just having this is much clearer. Let this one do it for you, which probably just wraps around it. Voila, create seconds, nano adjustments. Like, I mean, like, here probably as well, if you say off minutes, then okay, they just calculate it to seconds and convert it for you. Don't have to do any of that yourself. So that's really, really nice. I like this approach. The question is just like, do I like it for email? Because are you really, I mean, like, this is just a wrapper of a single object. I can't imagine I would ever have um, I would ever have a different constructor. Besides, the problem is that I don't think I can make this private. Remove the unused private email. Also, I can do this with the mechanical constructor email for the record. See, that's with the problem. Actually, let me wonder, how do they do that for duration? I assume duration is a regular class then. Which is weird because it's also an immutable class. So technically they could have just made this a record as well. But then I assume they didn't. That's a final class. Value based. They do some special stuff. Because immutable and trust safe. I mean, like, yeah, but why did you make it a record out of it? Probably why? Probably because they don't want to give you access to the seconds and nanos, and those are just a couple of things that you don't have access to if you do it. Do you really want to, if you have created direct, do you really want to say here and then say like seconds? No, you don't. You want to have more control over what you expose and what you don't expose, and that's where the record class comes in. And the record class is just so good in this kind of thing. Is it saying like this is just a wrapper? The duration is not just a wrapper around something. The duration has logic. The duration does things for you. You can add durations. You can do things with it. Well, of course, you can do that with records as well. But so it is more than just it really obfuscates its internals, and that's not what my email does. That's not what a record class doesn't obfuscate its internals. It doesn't want to hide it. It doesn't want you to force doing it. It's like, no, I will give you access to it. It's all fine. You just can't say, you can't change it. You can't really do much with it. Well, you can do much with it. You can get it and whatever. You can't update it anymore. But this is just like a wrapper around, like in C you would have like a struct object. This is just a structure. You just, okay, this email just has a value. Period. Yes, you can have things with it. You can do things with it. I could add extra methods and whatever to do something. But in the end, we all know that an email is just a string value, period. There's nothing special going on. It's not like, oh, there is some really complex advanced logic going on there that we should not want to know or expose. So in this case, I don't know, I don't mind saying new email, but then again, it seems a bit nasty. But as I said, I also can't obfuscate it. I can't make this private, this constructor. So the constructor would always be there. I could add a public static method saying off, and then just say return new email, and then you get value. But I'm not sure what that really adds, except then that instead of saying new email, I now get to say off. So no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it what it is. So I'm going to do final var email equals new email. Oh yes, 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 very clear. The email value, email object. Technically, this is the email value, but I can't call this email value because then my objects thingy will be weird. So I'm going to say this is the email sanitized email. And then here I have the final sanitized password. Because of course I have done the exact same thing for passwords. And then here I can just say of the sanitized email and the sanitized password. And why is this now interesting? Because my user login, which did I already change it? Yes. So this now has email and passwords, and I can by accident swap them. Email, I have that one. Password domain. This, oh damn, it clashes with this email. Oh damn. My validation. Is this not annoying? Jakarta validation, not groups constraints. Email. The question is whether I still, because basically I can, what I can also do is I can just postpone all these checks here to BDO, I guess. That's something I will have to check. For now, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna catch them as they are. Other thing what I can do is like you just check where they are used, which is not in many places in the controller. So here, where I create the object, that's fine, but here I do the to BDO. What I could just do is I could convert it to the BDO and then catch all the exceptions there, and then I said, oh, something went wrong. The problem is that then I don't know what went wrong, I don't know what is invalid, and with this whole validation thingy, it will say like, oh, the email is invalid, or oh, the password is invalid. The downside is that you have to implement the logic twice. I have to say here, oh, the password should be at least 8 characters. And then here as password, I will say like, oh, the password has to be at least 8 characters. My email, oh, I do validation on email, it cannot be null. Like I do the exact same thing here, it cannot be null. Oh, it has to be an email pattern. And yeah, so I'm still not sure whether I like this thing, and maybe I'm not going to do it. I'm going to see how it looks like if I actually do send invalid things, because then another thing that you need to know is that in the end it will end up in my exception handler, where it will do certain things. Yes, you have this whole entire response entity exception handler, which I was looking into, but it doesn't really do things nicely, and I have to check which actual operations it throws. What was it? Like it did too much or something. If, we'll look into that again later. But yeah, not now. Now I just want to finish a bit. Yeah, so here as well, this is the other way around from my DAO to my email. And then of course I just say final var sanitized email equals new email. Why do I do this? Just because I want to avoid the new email in here, then maybe I should just do an email off. Does that not make more sense? Why do I not like new email? Because it's just nasty. Would I really like an email off? Email. I am gonna implement off. I think it just looks better. It just looks better. So then where did I do this video here? This one. Yeah, create here. So I just do email.off. It just saves me time. It saves me space. I don't have to do things double. I can just keep my thingy here as is. No, I cannot because this is still. Nope. The only advantage I have now is that I'm okay with writing it on one line, which I don't know. Maybe I should not. Is that shorter? Good question. I don't like the sanitized name though. It does seem to validate it. Maybe if it's called sanitized, say validated. It's the same length, but it makes clear it's not sanitized, it's validated. It is allowed. Okay, so I'm gonna call it validated here as well. I'm gonna say final validated email equals new email. And so you would think that's, well, but you're reading from a database. Why would you have to do this whole validation again, whatever? And first of all, like I have no choice. I have to do it. That's just how it goes. Second of all is you do want to, strangely enough, you do want to avoid it. You do want to do the check. You do want to make sure that if you read things from your database, it is actually still okay. Because maybe because of a bug in your application, you have written something that is invalid. Maybe you've done some manual manipulation on the database. And then I'll do that later. And then your application still needs to handle that kind of things, or those kind of things. So just saying like, oh yeah, no, I don't need to validation because I know I've written it myself, it will be fine, is not enough. Okay, so basically for the password, you have the exact same thing. The only thing you have with the password is that we have the only limitation, or the only thing we want to enforce on a password is that it's at least 8 characters. So here as well, you have nested class constructor app test, and then you have parameterized test, I guess. void invalid final string value. Before that, of course, you have an add test as well. I should really configure my workspace so it doesn't look at the old annotations anymore. Void value null. Assert that thrown by new password null. This instance of no pointer exception dot class. So this is the first test we've written. If you run it, it will fail. This one will, of course, work, although this one is not even fully correct. Empty source at CSV, no, not CSV, the value source strings equals. Actually, no, what is the value sources? An array of one or more value source annotations. When would you ever use that? It's completely optional since value source is a link plain repeatable annotation. Is a repeatable annotation. When would you ever use something like that? I actually have no idea. So here, for instance, I would say like A. That's not a very secure password, or not a valid password. I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is also not allowed. Yeah. A, B, C, D, E. None of these are valid. I can even do C underscore at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, like this is only 6, so this is invalid. So it should be assert that thrown by. Technically, we should fix our first test first, and we will do that. But the problem is that the record class also creates a lot of logic already for you. So test-driven development is a bit more. It doesn't follow the actual very strict implementation or the strict flow you would normally do. Because now, for instance, I would also I would have a valid. Assert that. Yes. Okay. And here we go. Like strings equals, and then I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Probably the worst password ever. You have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Probably. And of course, you have more complex passwords. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Or wait, I can do something like. Oop, that's the last one. And then of course I could do like a very, 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 very long one. Technically, what I also could do is I could do one dot repeat and whatever. Like I could say like EFD. I could say like EFD dot repeat. I don't think I'm actually not sure if you can. I think this should be string literal. So this is what I'm going to do. It's valid. And so of course this will work. This test will pass. This will not pass. This will not pass. And since in here I don't actually want to change my value, what I can do is I can use the shorthand constructor, and I just say objects.require non-null value, and I say validate dot size length I thought there was finite between does the validation not have why is this not one counted visible mechanical okay, so this is public validate dot is true. Is there no length, no size? No. Then I just say is true value dot length is larger or equal than 8. Okay, and then what you could do is, of course, you can say here a private static final int min length equals 8. For me, I think this was a bit too strict. I mean, like, honestly, like, that's a bit crazy that you would have to do this, but yeah. At some points, if I am thinking of changing my DTOs and not using, I'm looking for where my DTO is. Here, if I say like, okay, I'm going to remove this, then maybe I want to check instead of like this logic, I probably do want to check my fields. Instead of just saying, to BDO, blah, 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 I probably want to add my request here. I probably do want to validate it, and I want to say like, okay, is this a valid email? Is this a valid password? And then I can create myself. But I feel like that's very complex and it's very annoying. But maybe I can do something very similar that is not that would be less cumbersome, and then you can actually lean on the BDO your thingy implementation here. Anyway, so now all of this works. And then this is really stupid because now I have a nested class value which only has one test. Valid. I mean, there is no invalid. You can't create a valid or an invalid object. So yeah. So this I will make a parameterized test as well at CSV at value source strings equals, and then I can just say I could take the exact same ones here, all my valid ones from here. So technically what I could do as well, I could like extract this to like a method source or like to some objects here, say like, these are my valid cases and whatever, and then I can repeat them again. I don't see the point of that at the moment. I could also collapse these and say my valid instead of just checking my constructor, immediately do my value. The problem there then is like, if this test fails, then I have to really inspect like what's going on. Now, if this test fails, I know like, oh, there's a problem with constructing this object. Of course, if this test fails, I also know that I still don't know, there could be a problem with constructing the object, could be a problem with the actual method. But then you can easily see like, if this one fails and this one fails, oh well, then it must be a constructor issue. If this one passes and this one fails, then I know there is something wrong with my value being set. So it's all about like clarity, very easily finding out what the issue is, just based on which tests are failing. I can see what's going on. I get a certain sense of severity. If you would have a lot of other classes, a lot of tests that all depend on creating the object, obviously, because you want to create the object, and all of them fail, you would see like lots and lots of errors, and you know, okay, it's severe. Why? Because I can't even create the object. If you would see that only your value class is checked, like, okay, it's still severe because you can't get the value out of the object. And in this case, that's the only logic it does. But for other classes, it might be that you say like, well, maybe not that severe. Why? Because, well, it's only one method that fails, or it's not that big of a method or that of an important method. Well, we can handle, we can do it. Okay, but so that's it for now. So we've implemented two domain objects. I don't know why this one is still shown in. Is that because it's open? Why is this? It's modified. Okay, password I didn't commit yet in the past, apparently. So we've implemented two domain objects now, email and password, and then now I guess it's just a matter of using them. User info DTO. This is a response object. That's another thing with the DTOs. You have incoming, you have outgoing DTOs. Actually, no, that doesn't even make sense because user info to get email will be an email. So here, for instance, I do the conversion the other way around. I say value because my DTO does not contain the actual email. It just says like, okay, just give me the value. And that's how it works. Exists by email here as well. I mean, user storage gateway. So now there's a nice thing. The user storage gateway actually should not do this, but should depend on the actual email object. And here it's a email.value. The fact that this is not null, we know that it has to have a proper value. We also know that this value will now be lowercase, and all of that will be fine. Here again, get password, we just say dot value. We know it will be fine. Email dot value, because it's a DAO. DAO will use the string. That's all fine. So there is some more conversion. There is a bit more like wrapping, unwrapping of objects. The thing is that the wrapping and unwrapping always happens in your controller or in your storage layer, never in your service. Your service always just works on email on your actual domain objects. And that is an important part to think about. What is user, my user tests? Okay, fixing my tests is well, yeah, makes sense. Why is that? Because, well, now, of course, now I have here email, as I can't do user login, email, and passwords, I should do a final var validated email. And so why do I like this as well? It's like now you can see like I've made a change to my business domain logic, and my test user will wrap it for me. I can easily say new email validated password equals new password, and then all my tests who rely on creating this object, because they do it through a test user, I know for a fact that this is all these tests, like, except here, of course, the user login test, apparently. I'm not sure. Ah, that's because that's the object itself. User login is a BDO. Yeah. Alternatively, what you could do is you could say like, well, this actually should be an email object itself. The problem is that then here you get the new constructors and not a string and whatever. And if you then want to get the string, yeah, do you want to have uppercase here? Don't you want to have uppercase here? Probably not, because this is how it is in the database. Database will always be lowercase. But still, so there are a couple of tests indeed where you have this issue still, but that's because they are really tied to the BDO. And it makes sense that in the BDO, because, well, you work on, so this doesn't matter anymore, this doesn't matter anymore, this doesn't matter anymore. This is all now very cleaned up. The only thing I have to do is the exact same thing here. So that's another question indeed. You can say like, well, should your test object not really use your domain object either? I don't think so. In most cases, or in a lot of cases, you probably don't want that, and that's why I have these wrappers. Let's say like if you the test object will do it for you. Here assert equals, for instance. We should also convert this dot value to values. Otherwise, your equals will not really do much. Well, it will do something, but it will not work. So this is now also okay-ish. And then here, actually, very fun fact, I'm not sure why I did not do that. Right, static final email equals new email of user dot get email. private static final password equals new password user.get password. And then you don't even need to do this. You can here simply just say password. The first should be email, of course. And then here login get email. This should not be user get, but this should just be email and password. The thing is now this actually technically could be, well, yeah, this is again the input output, like, oh, should you do this? Should you do this? You can say here dot value, but it's an object, it's a record class. I know it's immutable. You could say like, maybe you should not do this. You should say here new email. You could say that. You could do all of this. My tests actually become cleaner now. So whether you say this is okay or not, because you say, oh, login get email, oh, but that's an object. And you say it's exactly the same as this object, but you don't know the internal state of this object. Well, first of all, I do know because it's the records class. Of course, if I change this and it becomes all of a sudden a mutable object, then I do lose that safety. And maybe then you're going to say like, well, now all of a sudden your test is less safe and it's not good anymore. That's a fact. So for the people who are who are scared of that, you can always do dot value here. And that is actually what I've done in my test user object. If you remember here, I have compared really the value with the email and the password that I have in this object, which are just plain strings. So this actually is safer. So yeah, I could indeed say here user.getEmail. I'm gonna do that. I don't care too much about it. I think both of them are fine for me. But maybe indeed, like comparing them at the lowest level, does that matter? I mean, like in this case, because of the constructor or whatever, probably better. I could also create a new email and a new password and just make sure that those are like that I create them again, but then what's the point? This is good as well. So I think almost all of it is now yes, okay, I don't know why when exists by email, user get email. This is yes, okay. I think here we'll come back to that tomorrow about this whole discussion. The problem here was where he said like, oh yeah, you probably don't want to you want to avoid checking on user login because that's one you pass. But here as well, you said okay, you pass this thingy. Does that make sense or not? We'll come back to that tomorrow. The whole discussion. What about safety? What about like mutability of objects? And that's why creating immutable objects is such a strong thing. Which this is immutable, but what about converting immutable object to mutable? Do you want to anticipate for that or not? But we will look into that tomorrow. I hope you all join me then again. Bye.